Wild, From Lost to Found on the Pacific Crest Trail by Cheryl Strayed. Whoa, guys, this is a book I really didn't think I'd be reading. Honestly, it was in Tools of Titans. One of the guys in Tools of Titans, like one single person in Tools of Titans recommended it. And I saw it at the library. I said, hey, you know what? Let's freaking do it. Big book. But the one thing that really stood out for me is this kind of sort of, like, this is a nonfiction book based on real events, but like it totally reads like a fiction book. And it's not like a traditional business book or personal development book. Like, this is someone's story of like how they hiked from, you know, a little bit above Mexico to a little bit below Canada over a course of months. I think it's like 3 months towards her birthday. So something I really didn't think I'd be reading. It reads like fiction, but it's like not specifically a business book, but it has some very, very applicable like dedication, determination, and motivation. I think are the top 3 applicable themes and ideas from this book that I've taken out of it and have been able to apply in other situations where it's like, wow, you know, if this lady can hike, you know, thousands of miles on mountains through California, like literally across the entire state into Washington and Oregon, I think, yeah, like it really pushes you to like say, hey, you know what, why not? I can do it too, right? And it's like a boost where before you might have been hesitant, and now it's like you realize that all you really need to do is start with something just like she did, and you can go through with determination, dedication, and motivation. It was really, really inspiring stuff because like essentially her whole life turns around just from her walking this ginormous trail. It's really cool stuff. I think some of the biggest takeaways from the book are, you know, at the beginning she's super like trying to prepare for the hike, and she says, hey, you know what, after my mom died, I want to go and kind of change the course of my life. Right now I'm in a little bit of a pickle. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm gonna go to REI every day or every week for like the next couple months and get some hiking gear. We're gonna hike. She read a book, a guide for the Pacific Crest Trail, which is just like a ginormous hiking trail that goes from Mexico to California. She only hikes like sort of like half of it, but like here, there's a map. But the cool thing is she was like, you know what, this just kind of sounds like something that would work for me. So she went from like here to here. She did a little skip because there was a lot of snow, and then went up here. So pretty freaking cool stuff through Oregon, finishing at Washington. Just the edge of it at the Bridge of Gods, not a big deal. The point is, she was going to the store, she was getting ready, she was like super prepared for this stuff. She mailed herself, you know, food boxes along the way, because essentially she was going on the trail and living on her own with a tent and a backpack, and that was freaking it. And when she got like her stuff at little stops along the way, that's when she'd get cash or extra food or clothes and stuff like that. But one thing she did at the beginning that I thought was super insightful, and I think it was a really important overarching message to take from the book, was she was like super over prepared. She went to REI, right? And she bought backpacks, saws, shovels, I mean water bottles and the essentials, but then she took it to a whole nother level. And it was just crazy the amount of stuff she bought trying to get prepared for the trail instead of just going out at the beginning initially and going for it. And it kicked her up in the butt after a little bit, because at the beginning she was like physically unable to lift her backpack because it was so heavy. And then after she like finds a way to get it up by like huckling over on the ground, you know, she walks the trail for a couple months or like a month, and then she meets some other guys and they're like, yo, this is stupidly heavy. We should maybe not carry all this stuff. And they just kind of like pitch all of the, like, I don't know, maybe half of the stuff that she brought or more. She said it was a lot. And it was all the stuff that she thought she would need, but she just didn't need it. And on the trail, she was disconnected from society, totally cut off from all relationships, technology, all that stuff. It was in like the 1990s. So, you know, not as prevalent, but like still, you know, completely cut off. And so she goes, and all of her stuff, essentially these hikers find her and they're like, hey, this doesn't make sense. They basically pitch half of it. And it's like looking at that and seeing, wow, you know, she really over prepared for it. And sometimes when you approach a goal or a mission in life or a professional project, you do a huge prep before it, and sometimes a lot of that stuff is just a waste of resources and time instead of jumping right in, firing, and then aiming later. I think that was a really big concept that came from that, was like shoot, like load, fire, aim, right? So that you're going in and you're crushing it at the beginning instead of building up this, you know, big thing before it, which was cool. And her situation was a little bit different because she wanted to finish by her birthday and she planned to finish by her birthday. So it made sense. But that was one message that, like, really memorable scene. There were some other really cool things in here. Honestly, this is like a big book, so there were like a lot of scenes. And it was like one of those books where this is probably like the first like fiction-y book I've read like on my own, like in a very long time. And it's really interesting to like be able to use it as a way to grow my mind. It was like a literature book, and it was like I never like, you know, English books, like they were just like, I don't want to read that. But this was interesting because some of those overall messages were really applicable in my personal and professional life, and I thought that was really cool stuff. There was another scene in here where, you know, she was walking and there was a, you know, at a park, she got to a rest stop at a park and there were people, tourists along the trail, and she says, there's a big sign that says don't feed the animals, and then she looks and she sees, you know, a bunch of tourists just feeding the animals. And it was really interesting because she like was initially angered, but then she said, wow, you know, if I was in this situation before, I would be going off on this. But now that I'm here, you know, miles and miles and weeks into this trail, it just kind of dissociates, and it really reshaped her position in life and her real area of expertise, where all of a sudden she's like, just chill out, work backwards, not a huge deal, let people deal with themselves. And she was like in this whole new state of mind, especially by the end of it when she has so much more clarity in her life. And it's a real motivating story where you can take those principles and ideas of walking away from your problems, like her mom and her family was really torn apart, and just stepping back, taking it as your own thing. And then she moved on from that to grow her, you know, a real family, crushed it after that, because she had that clarity, focus, and discipline of, you know, I'm gonna walk hundreds and hundreds of miles, and that's just how it's gonna be. Feed, eat, you know, granola every morning. It was really crazy stuff, and some amazing scenes that she goes through, you know, in the trail, and like just having that area of expertise. It was cool stuff. I really liked the book because, you know, this is one of the first books I've read in a while where it's been just one long story, and it was something where, you know, all of a sudden, right, you can take the journey and break out certain segments of it and then apply those segments into different areas and situations in your life. So you can apply that end where she's now has the discipline to, you know, she had a problem with men and she was just going all over the place. And at the end, she was able to turn away from that and say, I'm changed, you know? Now I have this increased discipline over my body. And she was using that as one of the many ways that she was able to really change her personality and outlook on life just by disconnecting from her past worries and looking exclusively towards the future with the end in mind of, you know, I'm gonna finish this trail. Even though I'm only like an hour in, it's gotta happen. It was really cool, and throughout the book. I think the biggest messages from it: perseverance, dedication. I swear there was another one that started with P. Like sticking with it and going hard, and then making a decision and not going back from it, right? She was like, wow, you know, in the first couple of weeks, she was like, this is really tough. And I kind of related to that because when I started writing 9 to Noon, like I made the decision to write the book, and I was like, I've got my deadline Christmas Eve, I just have to make it happen. And that was something I saw with her where she was like, she just has to make it happen. And it wasn't gonna take years, it was just a couple months, and oh, oh man. Someone almost hit my car. That was the funniest thing. Okay, so yeah, and using that as an inspiration to take on a project, even if you're not 100% confident with it, and just figuring it out as you go, and then going and crushing it. I think this book is for anyone who maybe is in a rut or stuck somewhere, in professionally or personally, where you're trying to get, and maybe you don't even have that image of a long-term goal yet, but especially if you have that image of a long-term goal, and finding the persistence and perseverance to be able to get there, and the discipline and action-taking mindset to say, you know, make it happen. She was walking, you know, 20 miles a day. So she woke up, she walked she hiked, and then she was done. So it was like that constant dedication and obsession with what she was doing and cutting off everything else. It was a really interesting and applicable field with what she's done, and also what you can do if you're working on any goals or any projects to take it to the next level of productivity and output, where all of a sudden you aren't focusing on the negatives, you're just going razor line sight on what really matters and what you really want to accomplish. Freaking killer stuff. I hope you guys enjoy it. Link below if you want to check it out. It is really cool stuff. Thanks guys, have a good one.